Ladies and gentlemen, there's something powerful about a woman who understands the authority she carries. Not just in the way she speaks, not just in the way she walks, but in the way she takes command of the atmosphere around her. You weren't just called to keep a home clean, you were called to keep it covered. You weren't just assigned to decorate the space, you were appointed to consecrate the space. You carry more than wisdom, you carry weapons. And sometimes those weapons don't look like what the world expects. They don't always come in the form of loud prayers or dramatic declarations. Sometimes they come in the simple, sacred, strategic act of putting salt in places nobody else is paying attention to. Salt has always carried significance. It was used in ancient covenants. It was a symbol of purity. It preserved what would otherwise decay, and it added flavor to whatever was bland. But beyond the kitchen, salt was also spiritual. It was sacred. And when a woman understands that the natural can unlock something supernatural, she begins to do things that may look strange to others, but carry weight in the spirit. The first place to put salt is by your front door. That may seem simple, but it's a statement. It's not just seasoning, it's a sign. When you place salt at your entryway, you're declaring that what enters this house must come through the filter of peace. You're declaring that confusion can't cross this line. That strife won't be tolerated. That heaviness won't walk in unnoticed. That bitterness will be checked at the threshold. You're saying, in this home, we guard the gates. You're putting heaven on alert and hell on notice that your home is not open territory. Your home is covered. The second place is beneath your children's beds or cribs. It's a mother's quiet intercession. It's not loud, it's not showy, but it's strategic. It's you saying, God, cover their dreams. Let angels stand watch while they sleep. Let no weapon formed against them in the spirit realm take root. You may not always be able to be with them, but you can anchor their space with the salt of protection. You may not know what they'll face tomorrow, but you've already sent strength ahead, because a praying woman knows how to prepare the atmosphere before the enemy ever plots the attack. The third place is in the corners of your home, those tucked away spots that most people overlook. That's where residue can hide. That's where energy can linger. That's where arguments can settle if not cleaned out. When you place salt in the corners, you're making sure the edges are as clean spiritually as they are physically. You're saying, no place is too small for God's presence. And sometimes the enemy hides in the subtle. He waits in the margins. But when you fill those margins with intention, when you pray over every corner, when you consecrate even the hidden spaces, you close every loophole he thought he could slip through. The fourth place is inside your shoes or under your doormat, because where you walk matters. You don't just want to walk into favor, you want to walk in authority. You want every step to be seasoned with wisdom, every path to be protected, every journey to be guided. Salt under your shoes is symbolic of spiritual traction. It keeps you from slipping when the road gets rough. It reminds you that your steps are ordered, that even when you're unsure of the next turn, God has already mapped the path. You're not walking aimlessly, you're walking anointed. And the fifth place, don't miss this, is near your mirrors, because the battle doesn't always start outside. Sometimes it starts in the reflection. Sometimes it starts in the way you see yourself. Before you face the world, you face yourself. You confront your doubts, your fears, your insecurities. But when you place salt near that mirror, you're declaring that what you see is sacred. You're reminding yourself that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. That shame doesn't get to speak louder than grace. That regret doesn't have the final say. You're saying, I am who God says I am, and I won't let what I've been through distort how I see myself. This isn't superstition. This is sanctification. This is spiritual strategy. This is a woman who's decided that she will no longer let her home be a passive place. She will no longer let her family be unguarded. She will no longer let the enemy roam freely, hoping no one notices. She will cover what God has given her. She will declare peace where chaos tried to reign. She will claim purity where compromise tried to creep in. She will take authority, quietly, humbly, but powerfully. Because when a woman moves in wisdom, the atmosphere shifts. When she understands the weight of what she carries, she stops waiting for others to lead and starts walking in what's already hers. Salt isn't just a substance, it's a statement. It says, this house belongs to heaven. This family is covered. This woman is aware. And when you move like that, you don't just keep things clean, you keep things consecrated. And that changes everything. You're not just cleaning, you're consecrating. And the moment you begin to understand that, everything changes. The mop in your hand becomes a weapon. The broom becomes a banner. The simple act of making a bed becomes a spiritual statement that your house will be a place of peace, not confusion. It's easy to think that our daily tasks are small, mundane, or even insignificant. But when your heart is aligned with heaven, even the most ordinary act can carry extraordinary power. What you do in the natural often reflects what's happening in the spiritual. That's why the atmosphere matters. That's why it's not just about keeping things clean. It's about keeping them consecrated. When you wipe the counters, you're not just removing crumbs, you're removing residue from the day, from the tension, from the rush, from the conflict. You're saying, this space is sacred. This space will be reset. The world may not see what you're doing. People may pass through your house without a second thought, but you know what you've dedicated. You know that while others see chores, you see charge. You know that your hands are doing more than dusting. They're covering. You see, the enemy doesn't always come through the front door. He slips in through attitudes. He comes in through fatigue, through frustration, through distractions. But when you become intentional about every corner, about every object, about every room, you're sending a message that nothing goes unnoticed here. This house is not a playground for confusion. This house is not a breeding ground for bitterness. This house is not where darkness gets to linger in the background, hoping you'll be too busy to notice. No, this house belongs to God. And that means every action taken within it has a purpose, even the ones that feel small. The kitchen may just be a room to cook meals in, but when you pray while you stir, when you speak blessings over your ingredients, when you thank God that there is food to prepare, you're not just feeding your family, you're ministering to them. You're not just preparing meals, you're preparing miracles. That's what happens when you live aware of the spiritual significance behind what looks like a simple routine. The laundry room becomes a place of covering. When you fold those clothes and whisper a prayer over the child who will wear that shirt, or the husband who will wear those socks, you're not just tidying up. You're saying, God, protect them. Let your grace cover them. Let them walk in your favor today. You're consecrating what covers them. And in doing so, you're wrapping them in intercession they don't even know they're walking in. Even when you vacuum the floor, you're not just removing dirt. You're taking authority over what's been tracked in. You're saying, whatever tried to sneak in here, whatever attitude, whatever heaviness, whatever tension, it won't stay here. Not on my watch. Because a woman who understands her authority doesn't just let things settle. She discerns them, she addresses them, and she removes them. There's something powerful about a home that's been prayed over while it's being cleaned. You're not just playing worship music in the background to fill the silence. You're using it to shift the atmosphere. You're not just burning a candle to make the house smell nice. You're declaring that the aroma of peace and holiness will fill this space. Every task becomes an act of reverence. Every motion becomes a movement of faith. And little by little, you begin to realize that this isn't just housekeeping, it's holy work. There are spiritual battles being won in the laundry room. There are demonic agendas being dismantled in the kitchen. There are chains being broken in the act of sweeping the floors. Because when you invite God into your routines, He brings revelation. When you align your actions with His authority, You begin to see your house not as just a place to live, but a place where His presence dwells. And maybe the world doesn't applaud you for it. Maybe no one notices the quiet prayers you whisper as you wash the dishes. Maybe no one sees the way you anoint your children's rooms with oil while they sleep. Maybe they overlook the tears you cry while folding clothes, asking God to keep your family safe, to heal what's broken, to restore what's weary. But heaven sees it all, and heaven honors it. Because this is what consecration looks like. It's not always loud, it's not always visible, but it's always powerful. A woman who cleans with intention is doing more than organizing a home. She's ordering the spirit. She's saying, no chaos here, no confusion here, no fear, no strife, no heaviness here. She's establishing a foundation for her family to stand on, a foundation not just of cleanliness, but of consecration. And when the spiritual climate in a house shifts, everything else follows. Peace begins to settle in. Joy becomes easier to hold on to. Conversations become more fruitful. Children sleep more soundly. Marriages grow more connected. All because one woman chose to see the sacred in the simple. So no, it's not just cleaning. It's covering. It's contending. It's calling down heaven. You're not just wiping surfaces. You're wiping away attacks. You're not just sweeping floors. You're sweeping out fear. And every time you do, you are building a home that not only looks good, but stays guarded. A home that's not only beautiful, but blessed. There's something powerful about your intentions. When you place something in your home with purpose, you're not just decorating, you're declaring. You're saying, this space has meaning. This moment has weight. This action is not casual, it's calculated. And when you take something as simple as salt and place it at the door, you are drawing a spiritual line in the sand. You're not just blocking dust from coming in. You're blocking division. You're not just keeping the wind out. You're keeping confusion out. There's a reason the Bible calls us the salt of the earth. Salt doesn't just add flavor. It preserves. It protects. It purifies. It changes the atmosphere of everything it touches. When a woman puts salt at her front door, she's not being superstitious. She's being strategic. She's saying anything that doesn't align with peace, with purity, with God's purpose, stop right here. Because not everything needs to be invited into your space. Not every spirit needs to cross your threshold. There's power in pausing and saying, before anything else steps into this house, I'm claiming it for God. That salt becomes a symbol, a reminder that you are not just running a home, you are reigning in a territory. That entrance isn't just an open space, it's a gate. And gates are where authority sits. You don't wait until the storm hits to start preparing the shelter. You prepare in advance. You discern ahead of time. That's what placing salt at the door does. It puts the spirit realm on notice. It says, this house belongs to God. This ground is holy, and anything not assigned by heaven is denied access. You may not see the invisible battles, but that doesn't mean they aren't happening. And just because it's spiritual doesn't mean it's spooky. The enemy is subtle. He looks for open doors, for unguarded spaces, for moments when we've grown too distracted to defend what's sacred. But salt reminds him, you noticed, you remembered, you took action. You may not have a title, but you have authority. You may not wear a uniform, but you're a gatekeeper. What you allow through that door can influence everything within. That's why you can't afford to be passive. That's why intentionality matters. There are attitudes that don't need to come in. There are spirits of anxiety, fear, manipulation, pride, and heaviness that don't need access. And while it may sound symbolic, there's something spiritual that happens when you say, God, I'm putting this salt here not because I believe in the salt, but because I believe in the stand I'm taking. It's not about superstition. It's about surrender. It's about recognizing that what enters your home has the power to influence your heart. That what walks through your door can shape the tone of your entire day. So why not take a stand before the conflict even begins? Why not draw that line before the chaos tries to find a way in? Some of the battles we face inside our homes didn't start inside. They walked through the door. And when you stand at the threshold and claim it as holy ground, you are saying, not here, not anymore. You don't need to raise your voice to shift the atmosphere. You just need to raise your level of awareness. You don't need to shout to make a statement. You just need to stand in quiet confidence and say, this house is covered. And let me tell you, the enemy recognizes a woman who knows her ground. He backs off when he sees you've taken authority. He withdraws when he realizes you're not distracted anymore. Because when you place that salt down, when you pray over that door, when you declare peace over that entryway, you're not just practicing tradition. You're taking territory. Salt at the door is like a whisper in the spirit that says, this home has a watchman. This family has a warrior. This threshold has been anointed. And even if no one else understands it, even if they call it silly or unnecessary, you understand the cost of letting anything enter unchecked. You know the weight of a week filled with arguments, tension, or uneasiness. You've seen what happens when something invisible sneaks in and starts to unravel your peace. That's why you don't wait until the damage is done to take action. You prevent it at the door. And when people walk into your house and feel something different, when they comment that it feels peaceful, calm, or just different, that's not by accident. That's the fruit of your faith. That's the result of your resolve. Because before they ever walked in, you had already prayed over that entrance. You had already declared that nothing not sent by God would cross that line. You had already made a statement in the Spirit, even if you never said a word out loud. So while it may look like a little salt in the corner, heaven sees it as a boundary. While it may seem insignificant to others, it's a declaration to every unseen force that tries to find its way into your space. You're not leaving your door undefended. You're not leaving your peace unguarded. You're not leaving your family uncovered. You are standing as the protector of your domain, not with weapons made of flesh and blood, but with discernment, with declaration, with divine authority. You are placing salt, but what you're really doing is placing a line that says, this house belongs to God. And that means every part of it, including this door, is off limits to darkness. There's something deeply spiritual about the corners of your home. They might be places we overlook, spots we rarely pay attention to, but in the unseen realm, corners symbolize boundaries, edges, the places where things begin and end. That's why the enemy loves to settle in the corners, because he hopes you won't notice. He hopes you'll stay so busy managing the center of your life that you forget to cover the edges. But a wise woman knows, if you want peace to reign in your home, you've got to claim every inch of it. Not just the obvious, visible parts, but the hidden spaces too. And when you take something like salt and place it in the corners of your house, you're sending a message into the atmosphere. Nothing gets to hide here. Nothing gets to linger in silence. This home is holy and completely protected. Salt in the corners may look small, but it speaks volumes. It says, this is a claimed space. This is a claimed space. This is a covered space. You're not just sprinkling seasoning. You're taking spiritual authority. You're letting every spirit of confusion, fear, bitterness, and unrest know that there is no room for them, not even in the corners. Because sometimes it's not the loud attacks that take us out, it's the subtle ones. It's the undercurrents, the silent frustrations, the unspoken tension that builds in the atmosphere. And those things like to sit in the corners, hoping you'll overlook them. But when you make the decision to walk around your house with intention, when you get low and place salt in those corners while speaking peace over your home, you're not just doing a ritual, you're engaging in warfare. You're saying, even the places no one else sees, God, you are welcome here. Even the spots I forget to clean, I will not forget to cover. Even the shadows will be filled with your light. That's what it means to steward your space with spiritual discernment. It's not just about aesthetics. It's about atmosphere. It's the same way we sometimes keep certain emotions tucked away in the corners of our hearts. Unforgiveness in one corner, shame in another, doubt hiding in the far edge of our thoughts. But when we allow the Spirit of God to move through the entirety of our homes and our hearts, we're not just doing spring cleaning, we're experiencing transformation. We're inviting God into every space, not just the ones we've polished for display. And when we do that physically in our homes, it becomes a prophetic picture of what He's doing spiritually in us. Some of the heaviness people carry didn't start big. It started in a corner, a small disagreement left unresolved, a thought left unchecked, a bitterness that began in silence. But when you walk through your house and declare, God, I give you this whole space, you are giving Him permission to disrupt whatever darkness tried to hide out of view. You're saying, even the places I forgot, I know you didn't forget. Even the areas I don't see, you see. That's where the power is, not in the salt itself, but in your submission to God over every inch of your territory. There is nothing passive about a woman who prays over her home. She is not weak, she is wise. She is not superstitious, she is strategic. And when she places salt in the corners, she's not acting out of fear, she's acting out of faith. Faith that God can cover what she can't see. Faith that no matter how the enemy tries to twist his way into the details, she's already declared her space off limits. That kind of faith makes demons tremble. That kind of intentionality pushes darkness back before it even has a chance to take root. You may not think your hallway corner means much, but what if that's where a spirit of division tried to settle? What if your bedroom corner carried the residue of stress or exhaustion or loneliness? What if your children's room had corners filled with spiritual noise from things they don't yet know how to discern? That's why we don't leave it to chance. That's why we don't just pray in generalities. We get specific. We go to the corners. We say, this spot belongs to God. This place is protected. This house is saturated with His presence. Because when you've walked through too many storms to not take authority, when you've felt the tension shift in a room and couldn't explain why, when you've witnessed joy return after praying through your home, then you know this isn't just symbolic, it's spiritual. And the salt in the corners isn't just for show, it's a sign that a woman of God lives here, a sign that this house doesn't just have furniture, it has faith. A sign that no matter how small the space, no matter how quiet the attack, every inch of this ground is holy. And maybe no one sees you doing it. Maybe no one notices when you stop in the corner and speak peace out loud. But heaven notices. Hell notices. Because a praying woman doesn't need an audience. She just needs an assignment. And she understands that every assignment starts with atmosphere. She knows that what you permit in the atmosphere will eventually shape the experience. So she takes the extra step. She walks through the house not just as a caretaker, but as a kingdom carrier. She anoints what others ignore. She blesses what others bypass. And she fills the corners with consecration. So don't underestimate that little act. Don't let its simplicity fool you, because while it may just be a sprinkle of salt to the natural eye, in the spirit realm, it is a banner. It is a bold proclamation that this house has been claimed, and every part of it, yes, even the corners, belongs to God. The kitchen is more than a place where meals are made. It's where prayers rise while pots boil. It's where hearts are nourished while plates are filled. It's where mothers whisper over cutting boards, and where faith is stirred in with every recipe. And when a woman takes something as pure and purposeful as salt and places it in her kitchen, she's doing more than seasoning food. She's seasoning the spirit of her home. She's recognizing that the kitchen isn't just where people eat, it's where energy flows, where conversations unfold, where burdens are shared, and where healing often begins. Salt in the kitchen is not about superstition, it's about setting a standard. It's about saying, this space will not only feed bodies, it will feed souls. What happens in this room won't just satisfy hunger, it will shape atmosphere. because how you prepare something matters just as much as what you prepare. You can cook a good meal with bitterness in your heart, and it won't nourish the same. You can prepare a feast, but if it's filled with stress, resentment, or chaos, it won't carry the same peace. Salt in the kitchen is a symbol of spiritual stewardship. It's a declaration that this room will be filled with grace, with gratitude, and with God's presence. We often underestimate how much spiritual energy moves through our homes, especially in the places we frequent the most. The kitchen is a high traffic zone, not just for feet, but for emotions. It's where people come and go, where news is shared, where decisions are made in between bites, and where stress sometimes simmers along with the food. That's why you can't just clean the counters. You've got to cleanse the atmosphere. That's why salt becomes more than a mineral. It becomes a message to every unseen force that tries to turn nourishment into noise. A message that this kitchen is under divine authority. There's a reason the phrase, breaking bread, has such sacred weight. Because meals aren't just meals, they're moments. They're invitations for connection, for laughter, for healing. And the enemy would love nothing more than to make the kitchen a place of tension instead of unity. He would love to turn it into a battleground instead of a blessing. That's why you don't just cook with ingredients. You cook with intention. You cook with intercession. You stir in peace. You sprinkle prayer into the very atmosphere. And that salt sitting in the kitchen, it's your way of saying, this room is covered. Every dish, every word, every moment that flows out of this place will be soaked in peace. It's easy to get caught up in the routine, to rush through chopping and stirring, serving and scrubbing. But when you stop for a moment and place that salt somewhere visible, on a shelf, in a small dish on the counter, or tucked in a corner, you're inviting heaven into the mundane. You're saying, God, even in this ordinary place, I make room for your extraordinary presence. And that's the kind of posture that shifts everything. Because when you invite God into the natural, the supernatural begins to flow. Some of the most powerful spiritual moments don't happen in churches. They happen at kitchen tables. When a child opens up about what's weighing on them. When a spouse finally exhales after a long day. When a friend stops by for coffee and ends up leaving with a lighter heart. That's the ministry of the kitchen. And when it's been prayed over, when it's been set apart, when it's been sealed with something as simple and sacred as salt, it becomes more than a room. It becomes a refuge. You don't have to be a gourmet chef to be a spiritual feeder. You just have to be intentional. You just have to say, everything that's stirred in this place will be stirred with love. Everything that's shared here will be covered with grace. And when you bless your kitchen, you bless every person who walks through it. You bless every hand that receives a plate, every heart that sits at the table, every conversation that unfolds in the midst of clanging pots and pouring drinks. Salt has always been symbolic of preservation. And in the kitchen, that symbolism takes on a deeper meaning. You're not just preserving flavor, you're preserving peace. You're keeping strife from simmering. You're keeping anxiety from sticking to the surface. You're creating a space where nourishment doesn't just happen on the plate. It happens in the heart. That's why even when no one else notices the salt you've placed, the spirit realm takes note. Because the woman who blesses her kitchen isn't just making meals, she's making room for miracles. And when the day is long and the dishes are piled high, when the noise is loud and your energy is low, let that little dish of salt remind you this is sacred work. This is holy ground. This is ministry disguised as motherhood, as hosting, as everyday living. The kitchen isn't just where you serve others. It's where you serve God in the most personal, intimate way. And that's salt. That's your declaration that no matter what chaos tries to rise, this room has already been seasoned with peace, with purpose, and with the presence of God. There's something powerful about the threshold of a door. It's more than wood and hinges. It's an entry point, a passageway, a place where what's inside and what's outside are separated. And when a woman places salt at the entrance of her home, she's not just putting down a substance, she's putting up a standard. She's saying, only peace walks through this door. Only grace enters this space. Everything else, fear, confusion, division, heaviness, has to stay on the other side, because the doorway of your home is sacred. It's not just a path in, it's a gate that must be guarded. Salt at the door isn't just for tradition, it's for protection. It's not just a gesture, it's a declaration. It's a way of letting every unseen force know this home belongs to God. You can't bring your chaos into this sanctuary. You can't bring your darkness into this light. The salt becomes a boundary, a line drawn in faith, a sign to every wandering spirit that this house is not open for infiltration. And the woman who puts it there doesn't have to say a word. Her faith speaks loud enough. There are battles that start at the door. You may not see them with your eyes, but they happen. The argument that tried to erupt as soon as someone came in, the anxiety that seemed to rush through the threshold, the heaviness that hung in the air the moment you walked in after a long day. That's not random, that's spiritual. And if you don't take authority at the entrance, you'll find yourself fighting battles inside that should have been stopped at the gate. But when you cover the entrance with salt, when you stand at your door and speak blessings over whoever walks through it, you're not just being intentional, you're being wise. You're turning your doorpost into a place of divine filtering. You're deciding what gets access. Think about it, every person who enters your home brings an energy, a spirit, a presence with them. And while we are called to love, we are also called to discern. Salt at the door doesn't mean you reject people. It means you resist the spirit they might be unknowingly carrying. It means you welcome them with kindness, but you don't let confusion, bitterness, or strife walk in alongside them. You're saying, this house is covered. This doorway is sealed, and nothing that goes against the peace of God is allowed to cross this line. In the Bible, doorposts were places of protection. In Exodus, the Israelites put blood on the doorposts as a sign that the angel of death should pass over. That principle still holds true. When you mark your door, when you cover it with prayer, when you place something symbolic like salt there, you're saying, this house is off limits. This space is sacred. You're not waiting until the attack is inside. You're stopping it before it gets a foothold. That's spiritual strategy. That's what it means to be a watchwoman over your home. Some of the peace we're missing isn't because God hasn't given it. It's because we haven't guarded it. We let anything in, any thought, any conversation, any influence. But peace is a gift that has to be protected. It has to be watched over. And that starts at the entrance. That starts with a decision to say, before anything crosses this threshold, it's going to be filtered through faith. And sometimes that means praying at your door. Sometimes that means placing salt there as a physical reminder that you are covering this home in the Spirit. Sometimes that means simply standing still and declaring, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord completely, entirely, even at the entryway." It's not just about keeping darkness out, it's about welcoming the right things in. Love, joy, kindness, faith. When people walk through your door, they should feel the atmosphere shift. They should sense the peace. They should know that something different lives here, not because of your decor or your hospitality, but because of your spiritual atmosphere. And that doesn't happen by accident. That happens when a woman takes her authority seriously, when she decides that even the door deserves to be anointed, that even the welcome mat sits under divine protection. It doesn't matter if you live in a mansion or a one-bedroom apartment. Your doorway is still a gate. Your entrance is still a place of spiritual transaction. And what you do at that door affects what happens in your home. So place that salt with intention. Declare that blessing with confidence. You're not being dramatic, you're being diligent. Because you know what you've built inside these walls. You know how hard you've prayed for the peace that fills these rooms. And you're not about to let anything compromise that. Not even something that tries to sneak in quietly. The door is where the shift begins. It's where authority is exercised. It's where peace takes its stand. And when you place salt at the entrance of your home, you're not just protecting your house. You're honoring your calling. You're recognizing that what happens inside these walls matters too much to be left exposed. So you take that salt, you take your faith, and you draw a line that heaven recognizes and hell can't cross. Because this home, this family, this life, it's covered. From the front door to the farthest room, every part of it belongs to God.